Shocking anti-Semitism in British classrooms, standing with the guardians of Israel, who is calling the shots, plus the beautiful biblical invitation to seek and find. Stay tuned for all of this and more in this week's edition of Israel Matters. I'm your host, Stephen Briggs. If you are a regular listener to this program, you will know that sadly there is a need almost every week to report on shocking cases of anti-Semitism in the West. Today, I want to share with you a very distressing report from Nicole Lambert's Substack. Here, Nicole is sharing a guest post from a teacher friend about the growing problem of radicalization in our classrooms. This teacher has asked to remain anonymous. Here are the troubling reports from this British teacher. On my first lunch duty in a new school, I was utterly horrified to spot a large swastika emblazoned on one of the prominent walls in the playground. This was before the October 7th Hamas attack on Israel, which sparked a new wave of anti-Semitism across the educational sector, but it also serves to show us how we ended up where we are. Even more disturbing than the graffiti was the response received when I approached one of the senior leadership team at the West London State School. We're aware of the graffiti. It's been there for a month already. We'll get round to painting over it when we can. I explained that leaving the symbol on the wall served to normalise its presence for the students. I also suggested that it would be much harder to re-educate the students than to remove the problem. The response was once again astonishing. As I was informed they would get around to it. They never did. I decided to leave the school after just 1 month, so I'm far from surprised we now have children praising Hitler in our classrooms. I've been teaching for nearly 25 years, and during a large amount of that time, I've selected to work as a supply teacher, what Americans call a substitute teacher. I enjoy the variety and it fits in with my lifestyle. Due to the nature of my work, I've taught all over London and some of the surrounding counties. I've seen the good, the bad and the ugly over the years. However, lately it has been the ugly. I've borne witness to it in most educational settings I've stepped foot in. Before October 7th, the go-to phrase some students would overuse when they didn't want to comply with an instruction was sadly to misuse the race card. A student who had been asked to stop talking or to focus on their work would immediately retort with the phrase, "Are you being racist, miss? Are you being racist, sir?" Occasionally over the years, I've also had the phrase, "My father will put a fatwa on your head," shouted in my face, which, although it doesn't really make sense, can be very intimidating. I have also had Arabic slurs and jihad shouted repeatedly and directly to me, simply for asking students to focus on their work or to not disrupt the lesson with chatter between themselves. After October 7th, everything changed. There was an immediate shift within school settings, which was nothing like what I had seen before. Students could be heard walking through the corridors asking other students which side they were on, Israel or Palestine. Many Jewish students started to look visibly intimidated, as did several others. Just the other day, through the corridors, I heard a conversation between two male students as follows. "He seems nice." "Nah, huh?" "He supports Israel." "Oh, okay." The following month after October 7th, I found myself working in an SEN, that's a special educational needs school, for high-functioning students with emotional behavioural difficulties. During a lesson where I had been asked to cover a class for another teacher, a male student drew a swastika on a board and held it up towards my face. I asked the student if he understood what the symbol meant. He nodded and said, "Yes, Nazis killed Jews." I immediately called support from another teacher, sensing this could be a safeguarding issue. What followed was almost worse than the incident itself. The teacher, who was approached to offer support, walked into the room and said in front of the entire class, "You're overreacting." He's just thinking of the history lesson he had earlier in the week. Whilst it's not untypical for students with special educational needs to go over previous events in their minds, the student did not receive any further explanation or guidance as to why this behaviour was unacceptable. Filling up with emotion, I asked to be excused from the room and soon found myself in floods of tears. Another teacher who had heard the entire situation approached me in the corridors, surprisingly, not with words of comfort, but with vitriol. Addressing me, she said words to the effect of, "My mother-in-law is Jewish. I'm so sick of hearing about the Jews and their suffering since October 7th. I took myself straight off to the deputy head and imparted my very valid concerns in relation to training staff on how to handle anti-Semitism within the school. The head teacher apologised profusely and said he would look into making these adjustments. I couldn't help but wonder, why weren't they already in place? Another pressing issue in schools is the coercive behaviour which currently exists between students. This is raising issues that schools aren't equipped to address. I had one parent approach me last year to confide that her eldest daughter, who attends another school, had been surrounded by a group of students and asked to recite a phrase in Arabic from the Quran to be sworn into the circle of friends. The student refused and was immediately ostracised by her previously known friendship group. I recently had a group of 3 girls in a state school in North London verbally attack me in Arabic, once again, for simply asking them not to disrupt the lesson with their silly antics. The students threw accusations of racism towards me and shouted slurs such as intifada and curses in Arabic. One male member of the senior leadership team entered the space and immediately excused the students' behaviour without any consequences. I felt bullied in my own classroom. Thankfully, there are a number of well-behaved students in the class who backed me up and reported the behaviour of these students to senior management. It wasn't until I marched myself into the deputy head's office and informed her I would not be returned to the school that the senior leadership team eventually decided to place the 3 girls in question on immediate suspension. Sadly, I have far too many of these stories to share. Working at a summer camp in the summer of 2024, a young boy visiting from Qatar drew an image of people being shot in the head. The images were very graphic. The boy stated that the people in the image were Jews, and this was immediately followed up as a safeguarding concern and dealt with swiftly by the camp. But I couldn't help but wonder what would become of the boy. The buzzword has changed. It is no longer on trend to call a teacher racist. Now students are mumbling words and phrases under their breath, such as Heil Hitler, or answering questions in fake over-the-top German accents. One student went as far as presenting a Hitler salute in class, which when questioned he said he was merely stretching. Attaining evidence to follow up on behaviour with consequences is proving nigh impossible in the current climate. The other trick students are carrying out is teacher profiling. They ask a series of surreptitious questions with the intention of finding out 1, if the teacher is Jewish, and 2, what side are they on. Questions might include comments such as, would you travel to Spain for a holiday? Do you like Paul Weller? What do you think of X, Y, and Z, or Z, depending on where you're from, which side of the pond you are? Just the other day, a student asked if I had a Jewish nose. I reported the comment immediately. We're now 7 weeks later and into the half term, and after chasing this up repeatedly, I have still not received an apology from the student or seen any sanctions put in place. And so here we are now living through a time when this type of behaviour has become both normalised and accepted in educational settings. Students are no longer questioning, they are simply accepting the binary idea that Israel is evil and Palestine is good. The problem is deep-rooted. Young people no longer feel safe to debate or question this rhetoric, mostly out of the fear of losing friendship circles, and so the narrative is simply accepted as fact. A large part of the problem lies with the educators themselves. I've been working at a college where a number of the staff, from teachers, union reps, support staff, and even student services, are continually wearing pro-Palestinian badges and lanyards on a daily basis. They are also continually pushing their political views on students. Teachers are legally required to remain neutral. This is grooming. Even though I've reported these breaches on numerous occasions, nothing has changed. I eventually escalated the concern to the Jewish Board of Deputies, who have been in direct contact with one college, yet to date, there have been no notable changes. This behaviour amounts to indoctrination and not to the expected behaviour of an educator. The only way forward, which will make any lasting change, is for staff to be held to account for their actions, and for both students and staff alike to receive proper education in relation to all areas of anti-Semitism. If educational settings can't remain as safe spaces with staff behaving in the expected manner, then I fear for the next generation and the safety of Jews in this country. That's the end, friends, of the Teachers' Report. Honestly, it breaks my heart as a British citizen to hear that this is the current state of our school system. We need to take a stand against this in practical ways, not being belligerent or violent, but standing up for truth and righteousness in our nation, in our communities, in our schools, in our families. In so many ways, we can see that the current Western culture has lost sight of God's simple yet profound instructions found in Micah 6, verse 8. He has told you, O man, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you but to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God? Please be praying for the UK. May the Lord have mercy and may He protect the Jewish community in Britain. And as Christians, we need to make ourselves available to stand with, to support, and to pray for our Jewish friends and neighbours, because Israel matters. No doubt you heard that rocket attacks have been exchanged again between Israel and Iran in the past week. Let's watch a clip together now from Rabbi Pesach Waliki's Shoulder to Shoulder podcast, which gives an update as to where things are at with Iran, the ceasefire, and President Trump's so-called peace deal.
In terms of what's happening on the ground, I do currently have a son in Lebanon. And, Hezbollah has been firing at us, has been firing at Israel since the official ceasefire with Lebanon, with Hezbollah, began on April 17th, about a week after the ceasefire began between the United States and Iran. And ever since then, Hezbollah has fired literally thousands of rockets and drones at Israel, even though we're officially in a ceasefire. And President Trump has been trying to tie Israel's hands. Strategically speaking, I'll just say very briefly, but I'm going to get back to this at the end because I have a lot to say about this situation. I think President Trump is completely miscalculating the handling of Lebanon, because by trying to tie Israel's hands because he believes that he has a better chance of getting a deal with the Iranians, he's actually handing a gift to the Iranians, because the Iranians aren't really interested in making a deal. They're interested in showing that they have leverage, showing that they still have some power. And when President Trump tells Prime Minister Netanyahu to de-escalate, he's actually making it, he's giving leverage to the Iranians and taking it away from himself. If, on the other hand, President Trump gave a free hand to Israel to hammer Hezbollah, that would actually put pressure on the Iranian regime in the same way the blockade that President Trump put on the Iranian regime puts pressure on them. The fact that, look, let me back up. The Iranian negotiating strategy, and it's not just in this one negotiation. You can go back decades and see that this is always their negotiating strategy, is to always give whoever they're negotiating with a sense that a deal is potentially coming if the conditions are just right. And they kind of lure them along, and they drag things out, and they play for time. Why do they play for time? Why does time necessarily benefit them? Well, because they know how Westerners think. And they know that when Westerners are in a negotiation, it's just the way their brains work. Westerners believe, number one, that compromise for the sake of a deal is a virtue. And that's not how Persians think. That's not how they think in that part of the world. And they don't view compromise as a virtue and as trust building. They view compromise as a sign of weakness, that you don't have the resolve to be victorious, and that's why you compromise. But they know that because Westerners believe in compromise principally, that if they wait and simply wait and simply wait and wait and wait and then wait a little bit more and keep kicking the can down the road, the longer things drag out, the more Westerners are inclined to reevaluate their position and maybe look for areas where they can compromise and say, well, it's gone on so long, we're at an impasse. Maybe if I just modify this demand or modify that demand or give in a little bit on this, we can move forward. And then suddenly the Iranians go, oh, yes, that'll give us a breakthrough. And then the Westerners get all happy that they've made a breakthrough, and then the Iranians string them on a little bit more with the next demand. That's the way they operate, and that's what they're doing in this deal here. How do you break that? You break that by making time not work to their benefit. The only way for time to not work to their benefit is if, number one, you're really ironclad about not budging from your demands, but even that alone won't do it. The only way to really take the time lever back is to make time work against them. So you do that by doing things like a crippling blockade. And the American blockade, that's another problem, is actually much leakier. And Trump loves to say that it's hermetic and that nothing's getting through. That's absolutely false. There are overland routes from Pakistan that are bringing in goods from China. There are routes from the north that America hasn't handled. There's a lot of ways things are getting into Iran. So it's become leakier as time has passed. That's one issue. But also the other way you take it back from them is with Israel escalating in Lebanon. If Israel is destroying Hezbollah and Iran fears that there's a real chance that they will lose And there's a real chance that they will lose their iron grip on Lebanon that they've had for decades because Hezbollah is getting destroyed. Their biggest asset outside of Iran is Hezbollah. And if they see Hezbollah getting destroyed, that actually puts pressure on them and leads them to believe that time is not on their side. That's what you need to do. So Trump is completely mishandling this. And the Iranians, I read Iranian state media every day, Doug, and every day they're crowing over the fact that every time Trump criticizes Netanyahu or pressures Netanyahu to back off, they view it as a victory of theirs, that Trump is doing their bidding and by pressuring Israel. And creating tension between Israel and the United States is also part of their strategy. So everything that the Iranians are doing in Lebanon vis-a-vis President Trump is working. I say this with a very heavy heart. I love President Trump. I can't even imagine the hellish dystopia we'd be in if Kamala Harris had won. So this is not in any way, people should understand, it's not all or nothing. Sure. I'm a big fan of President Trump, and what he's done has been great. However, he is botching this because he still believes that there's something like a deal that can be had with these people, and that's just not the way they operate.
I completely agree with Rabbi Pesach that IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, and the leadership is never going to be a viable peace partner for Iran with the rest of the world. The Jerusalem Post is reporting that IDF Chief of Staff, Ayal Zamir, said in his comments to the press on Tuesday that the IDF's recent airstrike in Iran was a precursor to a much more significant and heavy operation. He emphasized that the IDF is prepared to strike Iran again if it attacks Israel, while continuing to dismantle terror infrastructure in southern Lebanon, including a base in the Beaufort area. Speaking at a command training exercise in northern Israel, he underscored the IDF's readiness for ongoing operations. The IDF maintained and continues to maintain alertness and immediate readiness to return to fighting in Iran, he said. All our defense and attack arrays were alert and ready. We intercepted the threats, fired at us, and struck Iran quickly and powerfully. We are ready to strike Iran again with another hard and deep blow. Iran's attempt to set equations and change reality will fail. In other news, lately, President Trump has made some prideful claims that he is calling all the shots about what is happening between Netanyahu and Iran. And while I'm certainly very appreciative of some positive things Trump has done throughout his presidential terms in this regard, I think it's very important to step back and remember that the future of Israel has never rested ultimately in the hands of kings, presidents, prime ministers, or military alliances. Throughout Scripture, throughout the Bible, God repeatedly reminds his people that he alone directs the course of history. Nations rise and fall. Rulers come and go, but the covenant purposes of God remain unchanged. The prophet Isaiah records the Lord saying in chapter 46, "My counsel shall stand, and I will do all my pleasure." For the Christian, this means that while political leaders may influence events for a season, none possess the authority to determine Israel's ultimate destiny. That authority belongs to God alone. The prophets speak with remarkable clarity about God's continuing purposes for Israel. Through Zechariah, the Lord declared in Zechariah 12, verse 2 and 3, "I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all the peoples round about, and a burdensome stone for all the people." The prophecy does not describe a city controlled by the decrees of foreign rulers, but a city whose future remains firmly in the hands of God himself. The nations may gather around Jerusalem, negotiate over her, pressure her, or seek to determine her future, but the Lord makes it clear that he alone will have the final word concerning Israel and concerning his city and his covenant people. History itself bears witness to this reality. Pharaoh sought to crush Israel and failed. Nebuchadnezzar called her into captivity, yet God preserved a remnant. Rome destroyed Jerusalem, but could not extinguish the Jewish people. Do you see the pattern yet? Across centuries, empires that once appeared invincible have vanished into history while Israel remains. This enduring survival cannot be explained merely by politics or military strength. It points to the faithfulness of God, of the God who declared through Jeremiah, "If those ordinances depart from before me, then the seed of Israel also shall cease from being a nation before me forever." That's Jeremiah 31, verse 35 and 36. As long as the sun rises, the moon shines, and the stars remain in their courses, God's covenant commitment to Israel stands. Therefore, Christians should be careful not to confuse political influence with divine sovereignty. A president may negotiate treaties, provide military aid, or even shape foreign policy, but he cannot alter the promises of God. No vote, executive order, diplomatic agreement, or international coalition can rewrite what the Lord has decreed concerning Israel. Human leaders operate within the boundaries of God's providence, whether they recognize it or not. The Lord remains the ultimate author of history, and his purposes cannot be overturned by human ambition. And for believers, the proper response is neither political triumphalism nor political despair, but trust. Our confidence rests in the God who reigns over all nations. Psalm 33 declares, "The counsel of the Lord stands forever, the thoughts of his heart to all generations." Israel's future, like the future of every nation, is secure only in his hands. The God who foretold Jerusalem's future, who preserved Israel through every age, and who promises her ultimate redemption, is still on his throne. And I believe we each can choose to cooperate with God, to agree with him and his word, to be a blessing to him and to his people, or we can choose to be on a collision course with him. He alone calls the shots, and he alone will bring his prophetic purposes to their appointed conclusion. I know which side I want to be on. Well, most people spend their days and their careers building their companies. However, my guest today has a little bit of a different journey. She has built something very, very different. Dr. Adi Vaxman is a business strategist, entrepreneur, and founder of Sheba Consulting, where for more than 15 years, she has been involved in building that business, helping organizations scale, create structure, and navigate growth. But after October 7th, Adi took those same skills and applied them to a very, very different arena. And she turned that challenge into what became Operation Israel. She's the founder and president and helped create a volunteer-driven organization which is dedicated to delivering protective equipment, medical supplies, innovative defensive technologies, and support systems to Israeli soldiers, first responders, and civil defense teams. And today, we're talking about leadership under pressure, the intersection of business and purpose, and what happens when ordinary citizens step into extraordinary moments, and why Adi believes that protecting a nation starts with protecting the people willing to defend it. Adi, welcome to the Israel Matters show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Well,
What a day.
tell us a little bit about yourself and your family history. I want to go back 2 generations, if possible, as well, because I know there are some profound things that have influenced who Adi is today.
Yes, well, I grew up in Israel, born and raised in Israel, between Kibbutz Hamapil, where my family was among the founding members, and Ariel, which is in Judea and Samaria. I was raised by Holocaust surviving grandparents that had a profound effect on who I am today and on how I grew up. My grandfather spent a year and a half in Auschwitz and saved, I don't know how many, but the number is in probably over a dozen children from Auschwitz that managed to find us over the years. And I found out about that story when I was in my teens. Um, Same grandfather. Uh, in Auschwitz celebrated Passover Seder over stolen potato peels from Nazi trash. And I remember as a child asking him, why would you do that? Why would you take that kind of risk? And his answer to me was something that, if I can boil down my entire identity to one line in my childhood, that would be it. And he said to me, puzzled, if I am not Jewish, I do not want to be. And that was the answer. And I haven't been living that for my entire life, but I certainly have been living that since October 7th. I moved to the States in 98. I studied at Cornell. I was here in New York on September 11th, taking care of injured people. So my story kind of all led me to what happened to me on October 7th.
Well, take us back there. What was your experience on October 7th, 2023? How did that shape where you've ended up to today?
Well, it was a Friday night, October 6th, here in New Jersey. My family and I were sitting in the living room watching TV. We usually watch the news from Israel. And then we got a video on one of our family chat groups of a white pickup truck full of terrorists in the streets of Sderot. And that was kind of that shocking moment. I remember that moment. Uh, then the next video showed a car getting into a kibbutz. Now, I grew up on a kibbutz, and I literally see that yellow gate opening and the terrorist shooting. And I don't know if all of our listeners know this, but all of the kibbutzim in Israel, they all look the same. They're all planned the same. They all look the same. They all have the same yellow gate. They have the same kind of layout. So seeing those images, I literally felt like the earth was dropping from under me. I don't remember ever feeling that shocked in my entire life. And so I had a friend and colleague in Kfar Aza who was trapped for 26 hours in her safe room while her children were hiding inside closets and terrorists were shooting inside her house. My brother rushed to the front lines. He is a reservist in Chativa Sheva, which is a tank brigade, and has served over 800 days of reserves since October 7th. He's still, right now, today, he's in Lebanon. I spoke to him a few hours ago. And my stepdaughter that was serving in a search and rescue unit at the Zikim base that was attacked. We didn't know where she was. We were trying to reach her. We finally were able to reach her around 2 a.m. And she was talking to my husband and she said, Abba, all of my friends are dead. So kind of the night compounded on us in a way that we really couldn't grasp. And I think it was the first and maybe only time in my life that I actually was helpless. I was helpless. I was sitting there thinking to myself, if I was in Israel now, I would take my gun and I would go out and I would drive to South and I would get killed trying to defend my country and my people. Um, and obviously I wasn't there, so I couldn't do that. My son was there. And as the hours kind of rolled by, around 5 in the morning, I got a call from a friend whose son was serving as a lone soldier in the Givati brigade in a special unit. And she was very upset and she told me that he's fighting in Nachal Oz, which was one of the bases that and the kibbutzim that were attacked very badly and without protective gear. So he did not have ceramic vests. Now, I'm 30 years post my army days, and I didn't know what ceramic vests were because we didn't have them 30 years ago. And I'm like, okay. She was very upset. I said, okay, hang up the phone. Let me think. Everybody in my community knows me as a problem solver and as someone that they come to for help when they don't know what to do. And so I knew someone at the Ministry of Defense has a purchasing delegation in New York City. I knew someone, they used to work there 13 years ago. So I wait until 7 in the morning, and at 7 in the morning, I call him and I call him and I call him and I call him because it's Saturday and it's 7 in the morning. And at some point he answers the phone and he's like, what? What do you want? It's 7 in the morning. He was cursing, like Israelis often do. And I was like, put down your phone. I'm giving you 10 minutes. Turn on TV. Wake yourself up. I understand you haven't seen the news. You've been asleep when the world, blew up. And I'm giving you 10 minutes and you got to call me back because this is super urgent. So I don't know. He calls me back about an hour later. And I said, I need you to tell me where to buy ceramic vests in Israel right now, today. And he's like, it's Saturday. I have no idea who I'm going to be able to reach today. And I said, you're going to find someone. So I think around 5 p.m. he calls me back, and I'm still researching and I'm trying to, reach other contacts. And he calls me back and he gives me 3 contacts of suppliers in Israel, including cell phone numbers, which we don't know if are still valid or not because his information is outdated. Said that these are approved by the IDF to supply ceramic vests. And so I wait until about midnight and I start getting on the phone. I use my phone, my husband's phone, the house phone, every phone I had, and I'm calling all of these numbers, calling and calling and calling, and it's busy and busy and busy and busy and busy. And eventually we get through And I put that night, somewhere around 2 or 3 in the morning, I put $162,000 on my personal and company credit cards and bought everything they had in stock that night, that day. And from there, we found some volunteers that were able and willing to get it into the field, and those vests disappeared within a couple of days. By on Sunday, I was going to say I found my partner, but I didn't find my partner. God sent me my partner in the weirdest way and most coincidental way. Um, and literally by divine intervention, I got sent my partner, Roy, in Operation Israel, who I admit that I originally was very cocky about. Who is this guy? What does he want from me? And then I realized that I got sent exactly what I need, someone who is very close to IDF. He lives in Boston. His wife is doing a postdoctorate at MIT, and he's very close. He has intelligence background and Shin Bet background, and much younger than me, so much closer to me that has contacts and understands the Army, how they work, everything that I don't know. And we partnered up, and by Monday morning we applied for the nonprofit, and that was my third. I mean, at some point I stopped counting, but I had several divine interventions that week. And so on October 17th, we got approved for the nonprofit, which is, yeah,
Great.
IRS doesn't
Yeah.
work that fast. The
Yeah.
IRS
Yeah.
does not work fast. This is, 9 days. We got approved and we started running with it. We started buying as much as we could, getting it to Israel, putting on planes. And so for about 2 years, we were not only focused on equipment and gear, but did heavily equipment and gear. And now we are still working on filling gear gaps. We are working on defense technologies and projects. So right now we have anti-drone protection and defense pilots. Some of them are technological, some of them are netting, hundreds of thousands of square meters of netting that we are working on vehicles to protect tanks, to protect tents where they're sleeping in. And we supply decoy mannequins, for example, in the hundreds. And we have a team of volunteers now that's assembling them and dressing them and getting them into the field. And we had several. We fundraised about $11.5 million as of now, and worked with or touched about 124,000 soldiers and sent about 167, I want to say, thousand pieces of equipment to the front lines, and whether it's medical, protective, defensive, all kinds, to the front lines, first responders and Kitot Korenut, which are the civil defense squads. And we are focused on longer term, not longer term, but I would say filling defense gaps until such point that the Army can take them over. And so we've had about 5 projects now that the Army has taken over. In the beginning, it was drone schools that we started. We had ID detection training and mock-up IEDs that we were teaching soldiers how to prevent. They used to, they can't identify those things. They look like everyday objects. And so teaching them that, and the IDF has taken over that project and several other projects that the IDF has taken over, including one just last month, our netting project for the Hummers that are in the field that the IDF is in the process of taking over. So we're still funding it, but they are distributing it, which is wonderful.
It is amazing how dynamic Israel has had to be with the changing narrative on the war scene. Of course, the drone development is really, this is the first real war where we've seen this in major usage. Obviously, Ukraine and Russia to some degree, but to respond while it is still happening is very, very significant and important. And of course, you began this and you've talked about God incidences or coincidences in the process and how it started as an emergency response, but has evolved into what really is becoming a long-term mission. Operation Israel really emphasizes helping defenders come home whole in body and soul. So how because we talked about the physical body, we talked about the ceramic vest and things, what is it that's so crucial to Operation Israel regarding the soul of these soldiers?
You know what? I will tell you a story from a few hours ago. I spoke to my brother, and my brother is the most like heroic guy on earth. Seriously. He never asks for help. He was injured. He didn't tell anybody. He was in the hospital. It was like he went back to fighting a week after rehab ended. He's crazy, a little insane. Um, but I spoke to him this morning, and he's very obviously depressed and very obviously, traumatized, like every other soldier out there that has been involved in this conflict. And I'm speaking to actually the same friend who started all this, um, who is talking to me about how she's concerned about her son. He's a lone soldier. He came back here to the States, and I've heard about 3 others in the same situation. And then they have no support system. They are out of the system, and they're trying to navigate the rest of their lives and normal lives, um, in an environment that is completely y- normal and usual. And it's very difficult to bridge that gap, right? You 5 minutes ago, like all your friends were dying in horrible ways, and now you're supposed to go to college and everything's hanky-dory. It's not. It's really not. And so the soul, as we know very well from the medical field, has a huge effect on the body. And keeping the morale of the soldiers and dealing with the post-trauma and helping them even as much as know that we are still here for them, that we are still thinking about them, that we care about them. Even sending them letters and postcards and drawing from kids has a huge effect on their morale and their ability to continue to fight. And I think a lot of listeners don't understand that Israel is a tiny, tiny country. It is smaller than the size of New Jersey. Those people, you're not talking about a huge number of people. You're talking about, reservists, we're talking about 500,000 people, maybe. Okay. The same 500,000 people, the same 500,000 people have been in a war for nearly 3 years, which means those are people that have regular businesses, jobs, families, small children, wives, husbands, anything, right? And they dropped it all. They left everything and they went to fight, and they have been fighting ever since. So, like, you barely see home. You don't have a normal shower. You eat like garbage all the time. You have no sleep. Your skin is killing you because it's hot and it's cold and you're sweating and there's all kinds of bacteria and fungus and whatnot. And you don't look at it. You don't care. But slowly it's getting to you, and it's getting to you emotionally and physically. And the emotional cannot be detached from the physical. So we are working on programs that are working on both the emotional and the physical. We do a lot of medical things. We are working on a lone soldier program now that I'm trying to fundraise for, to make sure that these folks that came back here, whether it's to the States or to other countries where they came from, they have a framework, they have a support system, they have something that they can go to where they're not alone.
Is there a particular story from a soldier or a first responder or a civilian dependent that stayed with you as to, and is really the motivator for why Operation Israel matters?
I have a lot, but a few weeks ago, one of the commanders of the 401 Armored Brigade was injured severely in a drone attack, and he is someone that we've been talking with, and we know him well, and I've been kind of texting with him the last couple of weeks, seeing how he's doing. Um, and the story that I was told, and again, I don't always get the full picture, and I'm not prying, is that the net that they had saved their lives. It didn't prevent them from getting injured. They did get injured, and he was injured severely, but the net saved their lives. I got a text this morning from a soldier that one of the decoy mannequins that we put out took a drone and blew up to pieces. I get photographs every day of vehicles on fire from a drone, where something that we gave out, like this week, we gave out these fire sticks. They're like fire hydrants, but in a small, like in a stick. Every soldier is like carrying it on them, and it distributes just enough of this powder to take out a small fire. So vehicle fires from those explosive drones, or when a person is on fire because of an explosive drone, another soldier next to them can take it out from their pocket or their vest pouch and take out the fire within seconds. So I get a lot of stories about how that saved soldiers. Our ID detection training has saved soldiers. Drones have saved soldiers. Robots that we've put into the field have saved soldiers. I get these stories every single day. I think one of the stories that really stuck with me is from kind of the beginning of the war. We were giving out these capnographs, which are electrical little devices, medical devices that can measure the CO2 level, coming out of a person. And so the army gives them, the medics, it gives them a single use one that changes color so that when they intubate an injured soldier in the field, they can know that the intubation went well because you can't see anything. It's really bad. And so they know that the intubation went well because it changes color if it detects the CO2. Great. Um, we were giving them electronic ones that were beeping. So basically, I get a call from a medic that is telling me that there was some horrible incident and he was evacuating a whole bunch of soldiers. And one of the soldiers looked in such bad shape that he didn't even think that there was any point in even trying. And something told him to try. He still doesn't, he told me, when he told me the story, he said, I have no idea what made me try because he seemed, to me, he was like as good as gone. So he tried anyway and he intubated him and he put on him that capnograph that we gave him and put him on a vehicle, and they started to move out of there. And there were 6 or 7 other people injured on that vehicle, and he was attending to someone else that was, behind. And all of a sudden he hears the capnograph beeping. The tube has popped out of, that guy that he was trying to save. And if he had used the army capnograph, the one that just changes color, he would never know that that happened. But the capnograph started beeping. He turns around, he sees that the tube popped out. He puts the tube back, saved the guy's life. The guy is alive, and I spoke to him. And so those are the kind of things that tell you, hey, there's a mother out there just like me with a child. This guy was 20-year-old. He's younger than my oldest child. And I'm saying there's a mother out there that did not have to bury her son because of a device that we bought that costs $1,000, or I don't remember how much it costs. I don't think it's $1,000, but I don't remember. But whatever it costs less than $1,000. It's not worth a person's life. It's not worth burying your child over.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so moving to hear and thank you for stepping into the gap where there was a need in that. And you being a Jewish Israeli living in the US, I imagine that you have experienced a measure of anti-Semitism here in the US as well. Is there any particular stories of that and your experiences that you want to share with our listeners?
Unfortunately, there are too many to count, to be very honest with you. Like, my daughter has been targeted and attacked left and right. She had a horrible attack on her high school graduation day last June, that kind of blew up on TikTok and became crazy. And I myself was physically assaulted very violently in last November on Black Friday, on a pedestrian bridge next to a mall in our area here in northern New Jersey, by by a pro-Palestinian or anti-Israel, whatever you want to call them, man from Teaneck, New Jersey. And I'm dealing with some serious injuries that I'm still dealing with. I have another surgery scheduled. I already went through a couple of surgical procedures and 6 MRIs, and I'm walking with a cane, and I'm very limited. But let's just say the justice system is working extremely slowly to not at all. And the only reason why there are any criminal charges pending is because I hired a lawyer and I paid many tens of thousands of dollars to apply pressure to the police department and the prosecutor to pursue charges. Otherwise, nothing would have happened. So unfortunately, I see it a lot. Um, I sadly tell a lot of people that as a young woman and a child, I was always thinking to myself about my grandparents. Didn't they see it coming? Did they not see it coming? Why didn't they leave? And this week, I told our managing director in Israel, who also happens to be my best friend, I told her, you know what? Now not only do I know that they saw it coming because I see it coming, but I also will tell you that I am not leaving, and I will die here protecting my people, my Jewish identity, the people of Israel, and the God-fearing free people of the United States of America, because this is also my country and I'm a citizen and I love America, and America's been being taken over by these evil forces, and I will die here protecting all of that I hold dear and that's important to me.
I was going to ask you next, what do you wish people outside Israel better understood about the realities facing the soldiers and the first responders and Israeli communities today? I often say, Israel is fighting for the freedom of the West. They understand the enemy that they are up against, and the West hasn't caught up yet to the reality of what Israel is standing in the gap for, and sending their young men and women to the front lines in order to preserve what made the Western way of life such a delight historically. And so, is there something that you wish that people would understand better about what is being the realities that are being faced by those who are on the front line in Israel?
I was listening to the interview or the speaker that you aired earlier, and I really do agree with him. Most people in the West that haven't been involved in this personally cannot fathom the fact that we are dealing with an evil culture, biblical scale evil, um, satanic evil that is sanctifying death rather than sanctifying life and freedom. And you cannot bridge that gap. You cannot bridge it. It is not possible to make peace. It is not possible to have deals. It is not possible. This is a culture of death. They sanctify and worship the dead. And so you cannot possibly fight that. So the only thing that we can, there are two things that we need to understand. One is that this isn't just coming after Israel and after Jewish people. We might be first, like, we were in Nazi Germany, but we're not going to be the last. And the other thing is that the IDF literally has its fingers in the dam of this massive evil force that is coming to take the entire Western world, just take us on and try to eliminate us. And they're saying it out loud. They're not even afraid of saying it. Mamdani is saying it. His wife is saying it. People are saying it out loud, and we still don't get it, which is astounding to me. It's like they're telling you to your face that they want you dead. What else do you need? But, and to me, the IDF and the US Army and, like I said, every God-fearing person on earth needs to understand that we are at a point in history that we are either going to be eliminated or we are going to fight. And I choose to fight, and I will go down fighting. And if I have to die to defend Israel, the Jewish people, the American people, the Western world, the values of freedom and loving other people and live and let live and all of those things, and the values that everybody's allowed to practice their religion, and people that understand that we have to be accountable to a higher power. I will die for those values. I have no doubt that I will die for those values, and I'm okay with that.
So when history looks back on this period since October 7th, what do you hope people will remember from this period? Not just about Operation Israel, but ordinary people who choose to step forward when they were needed most. What is it that's right? We're living it. I often say to people, there is a nation in the Middle East called Israel that is living with PDTSD, present day trauma stress disorder. You've got a whole nation that has, for multiple times a day, had to run to bomb shelters for their safety, and kids that have experienced that as a life that they shouldn't ever have had to experience. And yet homes have to have bomb shelters built mandatorily now. Where any new home, it's part and parcel of what whoever thought that society would get to a kind of stage where that needs to be a reality. but we're living in it in the moment now. Operation Israel's living in that moment. What is it that when people look back on this period, you will want them to remember?
First thing, I grew up in that reality. I lived in that reality. My daughter was running to the bomb shelter 3 times last night. She's in Israel now, doing an internship with a doctor in the ER. So eh, this is the reality that we grew up with. I also grew up with watching terrorist attacks very close. I also was here on 9/11 and I saw what happened. So I saw it with my own eyes. I was a paramedic. I was dealing with the people that were injured. So I don't need anybody to explain it to me. So you're asking, what we want people to remember. I want to tell people 2 things. One, you might feel small and helpless, but you are not. Because I felt helpless. And to me, it was a reason to step up and get up and do something so that I don't feel helpless anymore. And that something could be anything. It could be speaking up. It could be lectures. It could be, a small donation. It could be anything. It could be sharing on social media. It could be any action is better than no action. So what I want people to know is get involved. Stop hiding and feeling like you can't do anything because you can. Every person that does something is a force multiplier. So do something. That's one thing. And if you're asking me from a historical perspective, to me, it's more about like, I wake up every morning and I'm thinking to myself, one, thank God my grandparents are not alive because they would be devastated right now. And two, if they're watching me, I hope they're proud, right? Those are the things that I wake up with every day and I go to sleep with every night if I sleep. So it's like, what do you want people to remember? I was standing on the right side of history, and I want everybody that feels what they feel and that understands the massive, just really the scale of the evil that we are facing, stand on the right side of history, do the right thing. Don't give in to the brainwashing. Don't give in to the peer pressure. Don't give in to it. This is basically the devil trying to take us over. And we have to be strong and we can't listen to it and we have to fight it. And I have people telling me that their own children are being brainwashed and that they're losing them to this thing. And so, no, you have to fight it. You have to fight it in your own home, with your children, within the school system, in the education system, everywhere, online, offline. And yes, there is a price. There might be a price, but you know what? We're going to pay the price anyway. So we might as well pay the price while doing the right thing.
And that's a fitting way to end our time together. How can people get involved with Operation Israel? Where can they find you online, Adi?
So our website is operationisrael.org. We also have Instagram, Operation Israel. There are multiple ways to get involved with us. You can volunteer with us. You can donate. The most important one to me, in addition to donations, because everything we do is based on donations, we are all volunteers. We all have other full-time jobs that we are working on to support families. And so everything we do is on a voluntary basis. I literally work 2.5 full-time jobs. I work 100 hours a week at least. And so you can get involved. The biggest thing that you can do is multiply and amplify the voice, right? Allow us, invite us to speak at anything, at an event. Amplify our voice, share our posts on social media, talk to your friends, get involved with us, ask us how you can get more information, amplify the voice. We're a small organization. We do not have a marketing budget. Everything we raise is going straight into saving lives. And so getting involved is the biggest thing. You can email us, help@operationisrael.org. And I am on that email myself, along with the rest of my team. And you can join our WhatsApp group. We have a WhatsApp group. It's on our website where we send a lot of really reports from the field and showing the supporters what we are doing. We have a mailing list that you can join. Get involved. Just speak up. Get involved.
Thank you so much, Adi. May the Lord provide everything that is needed for the defenders of Israel. And to our listeners, I hope you'll go to Operation Israel's site and check out everything there. All the information is in the description below to get involved with their important work. As always, we wrap our time together with a biblical Hebrew word study and digging into important themes in the scriptures. And today, the Hebrew word that we are exploring is actually part of a beautiful collection of Hebrew words centered around the idea of seeking searching, pursuing, and diligently looking for something of great value. One modern Hebrew word for searching is mechapes, which means to search, to look for, or to seek out. But when we turn to the Hebrew scriptures, we discover that the Bible most often uses two rich and complementary verbs for seeking: bakash and darash. Together, these words reveal a profound truth about spiritual life, or the spiritual life. God created us to be seekers, and he delights in being found. At first glance, bakash and darash may seem interchangeable. Both are often translated as seek. Yet Hebrew invites us to look deeper at the nuances between the two. The word bakash carries a sense of searching for something desired, pursuing something that's needed, or seeking after something that is missing. It is the language of longing. It describes a person who knows there is something worth finding and sets his heart upon discovering it. Darash, on the other hand, carries the idea of inquiring, investigating, studying, or seeking with persistence and devotion. It's not merely looking for something, it's pursuing understanding. It's the difference between searching for a treasure and digging until you uncover it. This distinction, friends, becomes beautiful when we read Jeremiah 29, verse 13, where the Lord says, "You will seek me and find me when you search for me with all your heart." The first seek reflects the language of desire. The second reflects earnest pursuit. God is not inviting a casual glance in his direction. He's inviting a wholehearted search. And Scripture consistently teaches that God rewards those who seek him with sincerity. These two words often appear together, creating a picture of both desire and determination. We first recognize our need for God, and then we pursue him with our whole heart. Seeking God is not merely an intellectual exercise, it's relational, it's covenantal, it's the pursuit of a person. And this theme appears throughout the Psalms. David repeatedly describes himself as a seeker of God. In Psalm 27, verse 8, he writes, "When you said, 'Seek my face,' my heart said to you, 'Your face, Lord, will I seek.'" The Hebrew here is deeply personal. God initiates the invitation, and David responds. The search begins not because humanity discovers God, but because God first calls to humanity. And this is one of the great paradoxes of Scripture. We seek God because he first sought us. And from the opening pages of Genesis, we find this pattern. After Adam and Eve sinned, it was not humanity searching for God in the garden. It was God searching for humanity. "Where are you?" the Lord called. Those words echo through the entire biblical story. The God who invites us to seek him is the God who first comes looking for us. He's looking for you today. He's looking for me. The prophet Isaiah captures this beautifully. In Isaiah 55, verse 6, "Seek the Lord while he may be found. Call upon him while he is near." Notice the assumption behind the command. God is not hiding himself from those who genuinely seek him. He is near. He is accessible. He desires relationship. Seeking God is not a treasure hunt designed to frustrate us. It is an invitation into fellowship. The Hebrew concept of seeking also carries the idea of priority. To seek something is to value it above competing desires. And this is why King David could say in Psalm 63:01, "O God, you are my God. Early will I seek you. My soul thirsts for you." David was not merely looking for answers, blessings, or protection. He was seeking God himself. And when we come to the New Testament, Jesus echoes these ancient Hebrew themes. In Matthew 6, verse 33, he says, "Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added to you." The Greek text preserves the same covenant mindset found in Bakash and Darash. The priority is not merely receiving God's gifts, it's pursuing God's reign and God's presence in our lives. Jesus also says in Matthew 7, verse 7, "Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and it will be open to you. For first century Jewish listeners, these words would have resonated with centuries of Hebrew scripture. The promise is not that every curiosity will be satisfied or every question instantly answered. The promise is that those who genuinely seek God will find him. And perhaps nowhere is this more clearly revealed than in the life of Messiah himself. The Son of God did not merely teach people to seek, he became the embodiment of God's search for humanity. In Luke 19, verse 10, Jesus declares, "For the Son of Man has come to seek and to save that which was lost." Think about that for a moment. The God who commands us to seek him is also the God who seeks us. The shepherd searches for the lost sheep. The woman searches for the lost coin. The father watches and waits and runs towards the prodigal son. The Messiah seeks the lost. The Christian faith is therefore not merely the story of humanity climbing upward towards God, it's the story of God reaching downward towards humanity. Our seeking is always a response to his seeking. This truth transforms the spiritual life. Many people imagine seeking God as an exhausting quest to earn his attention, but Scripture presents something far more beautiful. We seek because we have already been invited. We search because he has already called our name. We pursue because he has already pursued us. And perhaps that brings us to an important question today. What are we truly seeking? Our world offers countless objects for our search. We can spend our lives seeking success, security, approval, comfort, influence, wealth, knowledge, or entertainment, yet every one of those pursuits eventually leaves us searching for something more. Only God can satisfy the deepest hunger of the human soul. And this is why Psalm 105 verse 4 says, "Seek the Lord and his strength, seek his face continually." Not occasionally, not only in crisis, continually. The Hebrew vision of seeking is not a one-time event, but a lifelong posture. It's the daily turning of the heart towards God. It is choosing his presence over distraction, his wisdom over self-reliance, his kingdom over our own ambitions. So perhaps today, friends, the invitation is simple. If you feel distant from God, seek him. If you're weary, seek him. If you're confused, seek him. If you are rejoicing, seek him. If you have wandered, seek him. And if you begin that search, remember this: long before you started looking for him, he was already looking for you. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is still the God who invites seekers. The Lord still calls to this day, "Seek, and you will find." And the promise of Scripture remains unchanged. Those who seek him with all their heart will discover that the one they were searching for has been pursuing them all along. Praise God. I'd love to hear your thoughts, friends, in the comments on today's show. Perhaps how has he sought you, or how have you sought him? Take a moment to like, subscribe, and share. It helps us get the message of Israel Matters out further and wider. Let's stand together and use our voice and influence to combat anti-Semitism and to point people to the Lord and his word. Israel Matters is a listener-supported show, so please continue supporting the ministry through the links in the description for this episode below. PayPal's there, Issachar People is there, to help make it possible for us to continue to make timely biblical content like this. Thank you for joining today. I'm Stephen Briggs, and this is Israel Matters.